What is going on, guys? Freaky Trades here, bringing you another new weekly stock watch list. Before we get started, though, don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'd really appreciate it. And without much more further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the watch list. So, first things first here with looking at earnings for the week. I told you guys it will start getting busy now with the new quarter starting for Q2 of this year. We could see that some of the banks started reporting on Friday. We got more banks and airlines reporting this week as well. So some of the big ones that I'm obviously looking for that I keep an eye out for is Netflix. That's really the only big one. Maybe TSM is something we can keep an eye out for on Thursday before market open, but I haven't really looked at that since the beginning of this year. It's a stock that I've kind of taken off my watch list, but maybe it has a good earnings and maybe it gives us something that we can look at perhaps. So Netflix will obviously be the biggest one though, with looking at that into Friday, which will be pretty risky, but it'll be interesting to see where Netflix will head going into that morning open on Friday. So we'll see how that's going to do on that morning. So if we go to the charts here, and if we go to NQ and ES, we can see that we tried recovering this week after all of the tariff news going on. So there really is no specific levels that I'm keeping an eye out for on NQ specifically or ES. Really just because, especially with all the news that we saw pending over the weekend. I know recently, I think it was yesterday, Trump just released, or there was like an article said that Trump will be accepting phones, semiconductors is something he'll talk about later on this week. So NQ and market overall, with a lot of the tech stocks being the major giants in the market, that'll be something that the market will be heavily waiting on and seeing what kind of news will be pending around that. So I know the phones one is the big one. It was primarily around Apple, with them being exempt from the tariffs. So that'll be something that'll be really interesting to see where the market's going to open up at tomorrow morning. Well, I guess today with futures, and then tomorrow morning with the stocks that we'll be looking at. So it'll be pretty interesting and pretty exciting. So NQ and ES, not really a specific area. I'll say maybe roughly 19,000 is what I have in my notes here. And then when I go to ES here, I have no trend lines either that could get in the way of anything. With ES, it'd be around the 5,500 area, 5,500 that I would be keeping an eye out for on ES for anything up to the upside on this. So two rough areas that I'm looking at. Like I said, I don't want to chart too in depth because still with a lot of news surrounding the market, I don't want to go too in depth and just everything either gap up, gap down. Who knows, right? Charting really in depth isn't an issue. It's just it's just the idea of having put in the time, and then if everything is ruined, all that time gets wasted. So I'm trying to be really proficient or efficient with my time and trying to get things going forward. So those are the two areas that I'll roughly keep an eye out for on ES and NQ. First thing is Apple. Apple is the main thing on my watch list as of now. I will be keeping it out for 200. Now, we did recently break this on a late day, and I actually did end up catching that. It was pretty sick. From 199 to 200 on a late day on a Wednesday trade, and then we actually recently rejected near there on Friday around the 200 area. So going into Monday or even this week, I will be looking at the 200 area. Who knows if this is going to gap up? Obviously with the Apple news coming around and being exempt from tariffs, I'm sure Apple will have some positive news from that, but who knows, right? Maybe it just affects it negatively. Who knows? It's our job to see where this is going to open up tomorrow and judge it from there. So Apple 200 is what I would be keeping my eyes out for on that. Next up is AMD. AMD, crazy move, crazy signal that Nor called out on Friday on same-day expiration contracts for over 40% in gains with the contracts. Absolutely nuts. The first thing that I'll be keeping an eye out for on AMD is 95. It's the most relevant level that we have on it, and it was one of the strongest stocks on our watch list, not in the market overall, but it was one of the strongest stocks that we have in our rotation of stocks that we look at every single morning in the chat. It was the strongest one on there, making it one of the easier trades to take because it just didn't have to depend on the market for it to make the move that it needed to make. So AMD, I will keep an eye out for around 95. After that, probably not until maybe even 98 or 100 on this stock. So last but not least is Tesla for me. There isn't too much on the watch list that I want to keep an eye out for. I'm keeping things pretty simple. Tesla, if you put this on the 30-minute time frame, I know this is kind of like a no man's land. If we zoom out on the bigger time frame, like maybe the 4-hour or the 1 hour, you can see that this is pretty much a chop zone. But because of the flexibility that Tesla has with how much liquidity it has surrounding the stock, you can take a lot of intraday trades on this, which make it okay. You just have to learn and know your stock really well and be able to read it accordingly to it. So with Tesla, one of our biggest gainers, earners, whatever you want to call it in the chat, it's one of the stocks that we look at every single morning, no matter what it's doing. And currently, we have a 30-minute downtrend on this. You can see that we had tried breaking it on Friday morning. rejected it, and then late day we actually ended up breaking it and holding above it during after hours. So my idea with this, obviously it's not ahead with the market, Tesla's been doing its own thing, I would say, for the most part, is I'd be looking at either a breakdown at 240 in case this rejection fails, or possibly the upside at around 260 or even 263. Yeah, 262, 263 is roughly the area that I'd be keeping an eye out for on Tesla here. So pretty straightforward watch list, though. Like I said, I don't want to chart too in depth just because of where the market's currently sitting at, and with the news pending around the weekend, it'll probably be like this for the next few weeks or maybe even months, right? Who knows how the market's going to react with tariffs, and then Trump putting the 90-day pause as well. Who knows what can happen? So, but with that being said, I hope you guys enjoy the watch list. Before you go, though, don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We really appreciate it here at Stock Hours. And with that much more being said, hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Peace out.